Welcome to the Life's Best Medicine podcast, where we are finding hope and healing one episode at a time. No appointment needed, no rubber gloves, and no copay. Just a healthy dose of life lessons to help equip you for this wild journey we call life. Hey everyone, this is a friendly reminder that we are here for entertainment purposes only. We may not even be that entertaining at times, but this is not medical advice. Talk to your doctor, check with your healthcare professionals before making any lifestyle changes or medicine changes. What we're talking about is our clinical experience and what we've seen. And so if you really want our advice, you can consult us. You can actually consult me as a doctor, or you can consult my guest and get all your questions answered. But we can't give free medical advice because we can't pay our bills with that. But we can help to educate you a bit and allow you to think a little bit. And always reach out to your medical professional before making any lifestyle changes. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Don't say we didn't warn you. November is upon us. Here we go. This is the danger time of the year for our waistlines and our metabolic health and our diabetes and all that, all these temptations and treats and all those things. So I want to thank my sponsors here that help us to get back on track or to stay on track during these crazy times. First of all, Keto Mojo, keto-mojo.com. Thank you for having a great ketone meter and glucose meter that I use with my patients, and it helps us to determine if we are eating the right stuff and if it's truly keto or not. And also Health Code, they're doing great work. Both of my parents take it now to help with mental and cognition and mental health and all that. So Health Code, Get Health, GETHLTH.com. MedHealth is the discount code if you want to get that for your family members. Great ingredients, great shakes, chocolate and vanilla. So thank you to my sponsors. They're doing such great work, and I appreciate them getting these episodes out and sticking by us and getting us to the end of the year here. So thank you for listening and enjoy this episode.
Discover a new path to wellness at Arizona Metabolic Health. Dr. Brian Lenzkes offers advanced medicine and personalized care, treating the root causes of your health concerns, not just the symptoms. Whether you're seeking direct primary care, effective diabetes management, or medical weight loss, with a holistic approach, our team is here to guide you every step of the way. Visit ArizonaMetabolicHealth.com today to learn more about our innovative health solutions.
Hello and welcome back to the Life's Best Medicine podcast. Super excited to have this guy. I've been following him for a while on Twitter. We've been friends going back and forth, and I've been watching his journey and his recipes and all that kind of stuff. Cary Kelly, welcome, man. Good to have you.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate you having me on.
That's great. And everyone's kind of eager to hear this. Like all your friends on Twitter are like, oh my gosh, I can't wait. So it's cool. I mean, we should have you doing all this kind of stuff all the time. But tell people that don't know you, your story, like give us a background growing up, what it was like, and your journey to better health.
Well, first of all, I have to say that it's an honor to sit here in the same spotlight that my nutritional heroes like Dr. Jason Fung and Tim Noakes have had on them. It's really cool to be a part of that.
Yeah, awesome. They're my heroes too. So yeah, I know it's amazing, and the influence. I just had a talk with Jason Fung yesterday, and it was hilarious because I was late for the meeting. I got messed up and. Anyway, such a good guy, but we were reminiscing about like all the people that we crossed paths with and what they're doing now, like Brett Scher doing metabolic mind from cardiology to doing brain health and all this stuff with metabolic health and how important it is. So yeah, it's awesome to have, because the important thing is what's the impact of their work on our lives,
Right. Yeah, and I have to say that I'm really impressed with the work you're doing and how your practice is set up. I think that's a really cool thing that you're doing for people, and charging them a flat rate every month, I believe it is.
Yeah, I do direct primary care in Arizona and in San Diego, and yeah, so it's a flat, like say it's $100 a month. You come in 30 times, you come in one time. There's no co-pays, there's no surprises. That's it. That's what you pay. And so it's an awesome model. It's like AAA. If you think about it, it's like AAA if you're for your car. You don't take your car in every day just because you have that. But when something's going wrong, you want to fix it before it becomes a disaster, And so It's a great model, especially with metabolic health, because it takes time. It's an upfront investment I have to do. Because once I get someone on the right track, I know they're going to be healthier, and I'm not going to have to see them every week. You know.
Right. So, how I got started was I ate the standard American diet. I tried other diets. I tried to eat a diet that made me feel good, and nothing ever made me feel good. I always thought maybe I was a lazy person because I was constantly going through these sugar highs and then the crashes, and I just didn't feel very motivated. And I didn't understand that everyone else around me was going through this as well. And it took me until it took me to realize this after I started eating low carb, and suddenly I felt like people are supposed to feel, in my opinion, and all that I experienced before in life was wrong. And yeah,
So,
but how
so
I got to that
yeah,
moment, what were you going to say?
yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Like, how did you get to that point? Like, let's go back a little. Like, when you were a kid, were you thin and healthy, and then you gained weight as in adulthood, or did you always struggle with weight, or how did that manifest?
Okay, as a kid, I was thin as a rail. I ate everything, but most of it wasn't healthy for me. I ate cereal and granola bars and bananas and all that stuff. I ate everything except a lot of protein and fat, and that was partly because of the way I was raised. My mother believed the whole cholesterol is bad for you thing. She kept margarine in the fridge, and I didn't have a taste of real butter until I was probably 12 years old. And then I was like, wow, what is this?
Mm.
And I would secretly sneak bites of butter whenever I had a chance in restaurants or at friends' house and stuff like that.
That's why, because we were raised in the same era, and it was the same thing. It was like low fat, and they had Entenmann's cakes and all these things. They go, the gosh, what were those cookies called? The Keebler Elf cookies and stuff like that. They go, oh, they're
Yeah,
low fat, so you could eat as much as you want, and we all got fat doing that.
right. Well, I didn't get fat. I could eat whatever I wanted, and I wouldn't gain an ounce. I tried to gain weight. I would drink heavy cream, and I couldn't gain weight. And I guess
So
that
you
was
were trying to gain weight when you were younger.
right because I thought I was
Yeah,
too thin,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I guess that was because the opposite of insulin resistance. What's it called? Insulin sensitivity.
Yeah, you were super, and that's the thing is like people get fresh. My older brother, he was a rail growing up. He could not gain weight, and he would just sit there and eat like two, and a whole package of Oreos at one time with a big thing of milk, and that was his thing. And he never gained weight till he's in his late 30s or early 40s, and all of a sudden, boom, he started gaining weight. He was like, "What the heck is this?" So he overcame the system, and finally he became insulin resistant like the rest of us.
And that point for me was about age 40. Um, that's when everything started, the screws started coming loose, and I started gaining about 5 pounds a year up until 2018. That's when I started low carb. But on my 40th birthday, I remember distinctly waking up in excruciating back pain, and went to the emergency room, and they said I had osteoarthritis eventually. And it was just a terrible feeling not being able to bend over and touch your toes or put your shoes on or anything like that, and having a doctor tell you, well, the pain is just something you're going to have to get used to for the rest of your life. And I believed him for 8 years. Took
Wow.
I took ibuprofen every day because he said that's probably the best thing I could do for it. um, Well, anyway, fast forward 8 years later, I've been going through all this. I've eaten 15,000 ibuprofen, and I went for a walk one day, and it was really hot, and I was sweating profusely, and my right arm went numb, and I was like, "Okay, am I having a stroke? What's going on here?" And I was freaking out a little bit, and fortunately, I made it home. And then I had a little talk with myself. I'm like, you got to do something because you're not going to live to see the age of 50 at this point. Keep going like you're going. I was probably 50, 60 pounds overweight at the time. And inflammation just ruled my day no matter what I did. After, 3 or 4 hours on my feet, I just ached, and I was a miserable person.
He just put you in a bad mood because you were in pain. Like no one's in pain and happy.
I would just have this grimace on my face just from being in pain, uh, just gritting my teeth kind of. And I can see this look in other people. I can tell when people are inflamed just by how they grit their face. I
Mhm.
know when people are in pain now because I had that on me for the longest time. And I even have the wrinkles here from doing it for years. It's the only place I really have wrinkles on my face from gritting myself. And yeah,
So what happened in 2018? Like, who did you come across? Where did you go? Let me try that. Did you see something from Professor Noakes or Jason Fung or someone like that where you go, you know what? I'm miserable all the time. I might as well try making a life change.
well, I don't know if you want to call it fate, divine intervention, or or whatever you want to call it, or just dumb luck. But I was working in the restaurant industry at the time, and a gentleman from another store came to our store to help out, to show us, some pointers and tips to how to keep or how to get the business flowing better. And he just randomly told me a story about how he lost 60 pounds on a ketogenic diet. And at the time I was like, okay, yeah, sure, whatever, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing because it is what it is, and I enjoy it. And nobody says that kind of thing is good for you. I
Well,
mean, come
especially being
on.
in the restaurant industry because you're around food all the time, right?
Right, right, absolutely. And he's telling me he eats mayonnaise and butter, and I'm like, okay, dude, whatever. And for some reason, after I had my little episode when I was walking, I remembered our conversation, and
Mm.
I'm like, what have I got to lose? I'm just out of the blue. I just said, I'm going to start. I'm going to start tomorrow, and I did. I started with a ribeye and some broccoli. I started with bacon and eggs, and then a ribeye and broccoli in the afternoon, and I started feeling better 3 days later, and never looked back.
It's insane, these kind of stories, because you wonder, like you're saying, you could tell someone's in pain or miserable, and gosh, if they would just take out the processed food and just try to exercise. It's hard, like you were saying, and I think you captured it well, is that when you're fatigued all the time and you're hurting, you're like, the last thing I want to do is start exercising, and the last thing I want to do is change my diet because I'm depressed with life, and if I eat these cookies or whatever it is, I feel better. You get that little dopamine rush, right? You get some pleasure from that.
Absolutely, and it's self perpetuating because I can recall saying, I don't feel like making something to eat. I'll just order a pizza, and I could have taken that $30 and bought myself whatever steak I wanted, and had some eggs, and the next day I would have more energy so that I could keep doing that, and so forth and so forth, and eventually it just becomes a habit. It doesn't really take much effort at all to invest in making a good meal as opposed to just sitting there and calling takeout or picking something up, and then you just feel miserable and hungry later anyway.
So after you start feeling better in 30 days, like what did you go, okay, this is it. This is what I got to do. And you just kind of stayed on that train.
Well, it was 3 days, and I could just feel the inflammation leaving my body like some grand exorcism. And I might have lost a pound at the time, and I was like, "There's no turning back," because um, 3 or 4 days ago, I didn't honestly didn't care if I lived past the age of 50 because at least then I would be out of pain. And and then all of a sudden, take that away, it was like it had rained inside my body for an entire decade, and then the sun came out and the birds started singing, and life was completely different. That's when I knew, there was no turning back.
Yeah, and people don't realize the impact of inflammation on the brain. There's so much I'm learning too. I'm still learning and I love it because there's new books coming out. There's things that or books that have been around for a while I just read on like, wow, this is kind of wild. There's one called Nature Wants Us to Be Fat that Dr. Johnson wrote it a while back, I think. Anyways, I just listened to it, and he's talking about uric acid, high uric acid in the brain, highly correlated with manic episodes and bipolar disorder, and the uric acid obviously can cause inflammation in the joints and all these other kind of pain syndromes, and it's also telling your body, oh, you're about to hibernate. So if your insulin and your uric acid are both high, it's a signal to your body to store fat. So changing your diet and bringing down the insulin, uric acid, both of them play a role in this, and it's really amazing that after only a couple of days you got better. And I've seen that with patients. I have a patient that she's diabetic and her sugars were out of control. She was in miserable pain because she needed a knee replacement. And I said, you know what? Look, I could put you on insulin. Her A1C was really high, her 3-month sugar average. And I said, look, we could either put you on insulin and bring it down quickly and get your surgery, but you're going to gain 20 pounds. You're going to feel miserable and you're going to be inflamed all the time. Or you could do low carb and get your processed food and sugar out and see what happens. And she was eating, tortillas all day and flan and all, dessert for every meal. And she said, okay, I'll give you 6 weeks and that's it. Okay. So 6 weeks later, she lost like 38 pounds. Her
Wow.
body felt, it was ridiculous. In 6 weeks, what happened? I'm like, oh my gosh. I go, you're cleared for surgery. And then she said, well, I don't think I need it. We took her off 4 meds that day, by the way. And because her blood pressure dropped, everything got better. Her mood got better. Everything like what you're saying, like when you see the light and you feel happy. And she said, well, my knee doesn't hurt anymore. And she was going up and down the stairs at the high school, at the bleachers. And she said, my knee doesn't hurt. I'm like, holy cow. So who do I call? Ben Bickman. I go, hey, Ben, you're not going to believe this. He said, didn't you read my study? This happens all the time, Brian. And so it's
Yeah.
amazing what we can do.
Inflammation, I honestly believe, is the root of all chronic disease. You get rid of that inflammation, and you're going to see instant improvement. Um, when
Yeah.
I when I bring this topic up on Twitter, I constantly get people telling me, "Yeah, I was slated to have knee replacement, or I was supposed to get a hip replacement, and then I changed my diet as a last ditch effort, and I don't need surgery anymore." That's so amazing to me.
Yeah, and you wonder how many people got surgery that wouldn't need it if they just changed their lifestyle. It's so frustrating in
Right.
a way, right? But it's a miracle for those who do it. Like, and I'd love to talk a little bit more when you said it was like the lights went on and you started seeing the birds and everything. Did you feel a difference in your mood?
Um, yes. It's hard to really say because I was just so in. Well, I guess I have to thinking back because I was just elated to have that weight off of me. I was at the end of my metabolic rope and just barely hanging on, and all of a sudden I've got the rope between my knees and I'm starting to pull myself up, and that was an amazing feeling. Yeah, I
Yeah, that you
couldn't.
had hope. Were you ever diagnosed as pre-diabetes or diabetic or anything like that, or you just were avoiding docs at that time?
I had a phobia for doctors. Yeah, because every time I was around a doctor, they wanted me to do this or that, and you're never going to be able to run, or um, you're going to have to depend on medication and physical therapy for the rest of your life. It was never good news when I was around doctors, so I
Yeah, and it's
tried to
hard when
stay
you're in
away.
your 40s. You're like, I'm only in my 40s and I got a long way to go, right? I don't want to suffer for the next 40, 50 years.
Right, and I've always it's not a great policy, but I've always been the type to bury my head in the sand. If I don't see the problem, it's not there.
Well, this
Like,
that's guys, right? That's how we are. That's why, we
right.
have to have a partner to keep us like, you better go to the hospital. You've been having chest pain for 3 weeks. You better go get checked. Oh, I think it'll go away.
Yeah, I'll be fine
Yeah,
in a couple
it'll be
days.
fine.
Something I ate.
Yeah, and who
Uh,
knows that right arm numbness? It could have been, a pinched nerve in your neck. It could have been inflammation, and all that. And it's amazing that what we see when people get that inflammation. There's actually studies on, back in the day, and I really didn't understand. I said, this doesn't make sense. It's kind of weird, but this is back before I knew low carb and keto. But there was a study that came out that said that's weird. People on Celebrex, which is an anti-inflammatory, their mood will get better. And even if they had the same pain level, if you're at a level pain level 7 and I'm at a pain level 7, if I'm on the med, I do better than you. I have a better outlook and I'm playing with my grandkids and all those kind of things. But it turns out it was inflammation in the brain. And the funny thing is, and I hear this all the time, you're going to hear this over, I know you hear it on Twitter, I'm sure, but people will say, well, meat's pro-inflammatory. So if you eat meat, you're going to be inflamed
oh
all
yeah,
the time. And then we see all
yeah.
these carnivores that go, I feel great.
Like, yeah, I've been eating this stuff for 6 years, and no, it's not inflammatory. It's actually the opposite. Um, people that say that have never done it themselves. I mean, you know that, or they're just reading it because
They heard it
it just
somewhere. They heard
it
it
just
somewhere and they go, yeah, okay. Yep.
right. It just makes you like once you realize that you start questioning everything you've ever been told. I'm like, okay, wait, this is the opposite of what everyone's been telling me. What else is the opposite? And you come to find out it's so many different things. It's like we're behind the eight ball our entire adult life because we're getting abused by the entire system from the food industry to the doctors to the pharmaceutical companies that want to treat our symptoms. It's just relentless.
Yeah, and I think that an eye opener. I don't know if you had a chance to watch it, but there was a that all these Casey means and Cali means and a
Yeah,
lot of people
no
who've been on
problem.
this podcast, where they did anyone listening, I would recommend go on Rumble or something like that and watch the Ron Johnson, Better Health conference. It was unbelievable, like the data. Jillian Michaels from Biggest Loser and different people were on there, but all saying, look, we got to do something about this. We can't just all be inflamed and miserable and grumpy and talking about attention deficit disorder, autism rates going up. All these things are nutritionally based when we look at it. So, what you did is change the course of your life just by, saying, look, I'll listen to some one guy who comes along and says, maybe I should try this.
Yeah, I saw a little bit of that this morning. I didn't have a chance to dive deep into it, but what really resonated with me was when Casey Means said that it's going to take heroic leadership to get us out of this mess, and
Yeah.
that's going to be really hard to do because a lot of these people are making money on the way things are, and what's going to stop them from waking up and saying, "Okay, this isn't right."
Yeah, and it's going to be I've always felt, I know like Dr. Lustig and a lot of people are trying to get legislation changed and Nina Teicholz and people like that, and they're trying to get policy change. And I think ultimately it's going to come down to people like you and me saying, "Look, I'm not eating that terrible food anymore." And as soon as there's
Right,
no demand and stuff's rotting on the shelves, I mean, unfortunately, that stuff's going to take years to rot on the shelves because they have so many preservatives and garbage in it. But
right.
the point is when the manufacturer says, maybe we should change what we're doing, right? Because financially we're getting hit. It's all about money. When it all comes back to money at some point.
Right. People vote with their dollars. If you don't buy people's garbage, they're going to stop making that garbage or they're going to change it so that people do buy it. Of course, they want to keep it profitable, but yeah, if you hit them in the wallet, that's the only way to get big food's attention. Um, for me, I'm passionate about doing what I'm doing because I got angry when I realized, that I've been lied to my whole life about, everything nutrition. And the only way that I could get back at the people that lied to me was to inform other people, to help other people wake up and see what's going on, because that didn't do anything to make my anger go away, but it turned that anger into a good thing, because I would feel good that I helped John or Joe or Susan improve their life. That's pretty that's powerful. That's priceless even.
Yeah, it's huge. And that's where Tro and I are passionate about that because we've seen the disaster. We know what's coming. We know what's coming. If your sugars are running in the 300 range, you may have seen me post recently, but my cousin died at 61 recently from kidney failure, bilateral leg amputations, right hand amputation, because he drank a 2 liter of soda every day. That was his thing. And you go, gosh, dang it. But you want to, it's like slow suicide, really, when your sugars are out of control and you can't that addiction part of it, it's a tragedy, really.
I have relatives who would look at me and ask me how my diet's going. I don't really consider it a diet anymore. It's just the way I eat, and I would tell them it's going great. I feel good, and I throw the idea at them like, hey, you could improve this or that if you give it a go, and they're like, I could never change the way I'm eating. I understand what I'm doing is harmful, but I can't change. I'm too old to change, and that just takes the wind out of your sails. When that's your own people saying this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I've seen it. That's what I love. What I do, they talk. I just gave a talk on physician burnout, and the suicide rate among physicians is over twice the national average because they get in there and want to help the world, and they realize they're not. All they're doing is they're a cog in the wheel, and they're just trying to crank out as many patients as they can, and they don't really look at outcomes anymore. But they get graded on how many drugs you give out. If you have this condition, you have to give this, and this drug. If you do, then you get rewarded at the end of the year. You get a bonus. And so it's just so hard to see, people giving up on it. I think that's the thing we're learning is I've had experience in the inner city. I've had experience out in a rural area doing just remote like this on Zoom, helping people and educating them, and people reversing diabetes and getting in shape and helping themselves and all those things. And it's amazing to see it. And you go, wow, gosh, if someone just because the argument is always like, oh, it's too expensive to eat low carb. And Dr. Glant just did a study again in the inner city in the Bronx and had dramatic improvements because if what you're telling them works, they stick with it. If it's not working, like if you had done that for 3 days and you felt terrible, so you go, okay, forget it, I'll try something else. But if something works and people go, I'm feeling better, my back doesn't hurt, I can tie my shoes now again, and you have a
Right.
life again. It's amazing.
Yeah. As far as the doctors and the suicide thing, I have a great respect, a lot greater respect than I used to when I had no trust of doctors. I understand now that a lot of them can't speak out because they're threatening their job. If they do, they have to abide by the standard of care, and they've got to get their drug quotas in and all of that. And I really feel sorry for people that are trapped in that because they're not helping people; they're just making money, and that is pretty sad.
Yeah, that's the hard part. I think for them, that's why this suits because they're looking, going, look, I'm here just to make money now. I'm here just to please the system. And it's hard. I stepped out in 2020 and I never looked back, never looked back.
Right,
I think my life is so much better. And part of it is I can self-select for patients who want to be healthier. They go, look, I want to be healthier, help me. Okay, I'm all in. You tell me what to do. But in the general HMO system, the problem is they're going to go to their endocrinologist. They go, oh, you don't have to change your diet. Just shoot more insulin, take this drug, and this will make you lose weight. And it's a problem because it's all pharma. It's all pharmaceutical based, and no one has an interest in healthy patients except as direct primary care. Because if you're healthy and you're my patient, and you go, hey Brian, I'm doing great. I might hurt my knee every once in a while and come in for that, but I'm feeling great. It's better than you being sick all the time and getting wounds that we have to take care of and trying to fix things and a lot of times it's the damage that's been done. It's like if you never change your oil for 200,000 miles and all of a sudden your engine blows up and you go fix my engine. It's like, why don't we
right,
change the oil and then we won't have to fix the engine and
right.
your body can run a lot better.
So how hard is it for like somebody to get out of the system and into what you're doing? Is it an easy transition? What's the money like? Do they go from a lot to a little, or how does that
Yeah,
work?
from a physician standpoint, I took a huge pay cut and it was like you have no guaranteed salary. When you work for yourself, you go, okay, I have overhead, I got to pay for lights and all this kind of stuff. And so you hope, and fortunately for me, I was in a good position because I went from my standard practice where I had 2,200 patients and going to a new practice where I just want 500 patients or less, I started with 200 patients maybe. So yes, I took a pay cut, but you know what? I was going home it wasn't about the money for me. I had made money, but the point was I could go home, have coffee with my wife in the morning before I saw patients. My office is 2 minutes from my house and I have hardly any overhead because it's a small building and I don't have a huge staff. It's just me, my office manager, medical assistant, right? And I have a PA who joined me now. So in my old office, there would be 50 people as support staff for all the doctors. You have someone who's billing insurance. I don't bill insurance. I don't deal with insurance because if you're my patient, I work out deals with the radiology because a lot of people have this is the big problem with medicine. You have a $10,000 deductible, right? And then you get sick and they have to go see the doctor and they say, well, you're gonna have to pay for that visit. And they charge you $350 every time you go in, because that's not what they're getting paid by insurance, but that's their. So in my old practice, I said, guys, we should have a cash pay for people who have a high deductible, so they could pay $120 or $100 or something, come in, get seen, get their problem taken care of. And they were totally no, no, no. We're saying in the insurance model. Well, it's hard on people, especially when the Affordable Care Act went through. These people who don't have a lot of money have a $10,000 deductible. Where's that going to come from, right?
Right,
So most of the time you're betting you're going to stay healthy, but you need insurance for those if you get hit by a truck or those kind of things. So people with good insurance that I could just order an MRI and get it. And so well, the thing is, for instance, if you can't, like when you hurt your back, if your back's hurting, your neck's hurting, you come in and go, I'm miserable, my arms numb, my legs numb. They're going to say, the insurance is going to say, you need to do 6 weeks of physical therapy. You have to have an x-ray and then you have to do this and this. You have to jump through all these hoops to get an MRI. But if you came to me and go, Brian, I'm hurting, I want to get this done, $250, go over it right now and get your MRI, and we can fix your problem, right? If it's something really bad. So getting out, and the copay for the insurance, like my daughter blew her knee out playing soccer. The copay was $600. The imaging place was it was $1,200, I think, for the MRI, and your copay was 600. Insurance was going to cover 600. And I said, "Gosh, what about people with no insurance? How much is it?" And she goes, $300. I'm like, "What?" If I just pay you like with my Amex right now, it's $300, but if I go through insurance, it's 600. And she goes, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Here you go. Run the Amex. I'm paying cash. I'm not
Yeah,
dealing
it's
with it."
crazy how it works.
Yeah, and but the delay in treatment is the problem because I have patients that are with a huge HMO in California, and they come to me and go, "Doc, can you order an MRI for me?" They're it's been 18 months and I can't get an MRI because they just run you through the mill until you give up or you get better. One of those two things happens. But when we focus on metabolic health, it's amazing that their knees get better, their hips get, like what you're saying. We see it all the time now. And you go, it's chronic, like you said, chronic inflammation. And if you eat terrible food, you get chronic inflammation in your gut. And we talk about autoimmune diseases and all these other things that flare out of that. And one of the other crazy ones with fibromyalgia, which has always been, when you have achiness all over your body and you feel kind of miserable and tired and fatigued and weak. Back in the day, I heard this study. I'm like, this is the dumbest thing. They're using metformin for fibromyalgia. It's like metformin is a diabetes medicine. It's not a
Right.
fibromyalgia. It's not an anti-inflammatory. How the heck does that work? And the people got better. And it turns out you lower your insulin, and your inflammation gets better, right? And so their muscles that were all inflamed before now feel better. And so it's amazing when we think of the same thing. You're eating meat. What happens? Your insulin goes down. Your insulin goes down. You feel better. Your mood gets better. Your cravings get better. All these things do. What now? When you first start, was it hard? Were you like, oh, I really want to go back and have pizza, or and how do you manage that now?
Um, when I first started, it was hard for the first 3 weeks or so, maybe month, and I'm not saying hard all the time. It was just hard occasionally, in between meals when I was trying to detrain myself from eating a snack, 3 snacks a day and 3 meals to just eating, twice a day is what I was trying to do. And I leaned on boiled eggs and pork rinds and almonds. I bought a big jar of almonds when I first started, and that was probably a mistake because I would want to eat those just because I knew they were there. And nuts, just they're terrible for satiety. And eventually, that all calmed down though. After about a month, I didn't need the training wheels anymore, and I just became normalized and started eating 2 meals a day. And around that time, my fat loss started kicking in, and that had me really pumped.
Yeah,
Um,
you initially started it more for the pain, right? It sounds like,
well,
or
I
weight loss
initially
too, both.
started. I thought it was a weight problem when I had my episode with my arm, and the day I went walking. I thought it was a weight thing, which indirectly it was. But
How much did you weigh back then?
well, that's the thing. I weighed myself. The last time I weighed myself was around 2016. I saw 210 pounds, and I freaked out. I'm like, I'm not stepping on a scale anymore because I don't want to see it.
Stressful, man. Yeah,
If I
totally.
don't see it, then it's not there. And so I'm going to estimate I weighed 220 maybe
Hmm.
in that area. And after 6 months of keto, I got down to 165.
Wow. That's huge.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
it's
huge.
I was trying to figure out what the 50, 60 pounds is. It's the weight of a small 6 to 7 year old. Imagine carrying one of those around all day and then not having to carry one around anymore.
Yeah, it's amazing. And the other thing that's the trouble with that is when you lose 65 pounds, now you're not carrying 65 pounds anymore. And what happens is you have to change what you're doing a little bit to maintain that, either exercise or watching, maybe cutting portion sizes a little bit or something like that,
Mhm.
because our metabolic rate naturally drops with weight loss. So that's one thing that for sure lowers your metabolic rate because your body's saying, uh-oh, you're losing weight. Let's put the brakes on because we've all died of starvation. So there's this switch where your body's like trying to we have to each figure out where our switch is to get us at a good weight where we feel comfortable.
That's where Jason Fung came in, very helpful to me, and I always remembered his advice to switch things up. and I was incorporating intermittent fasting with extended fasting during my most dynamic weight loss stage, and that would be I would eat OMAD maybe twice a week. I would eat 2 meals twice a week, and I would do a 2 or 3 day fast once a week. And I was
Mm.
dropping like 10 pounds a month doing that for a couple months.
Wow.
And I always felt great doing it because, a lot of some people don't feel that superhuman fasting high that other people do, and I just feel like I'm wired when I'm doing that an extended fast more than 2 days. So I don't get that metabolic slowdown at all when I was fasting, or even like I said, when I was in my most dynamic weight loss stage.
Yeah, it's amazing and different. And I think once you get that insulin level down, people feel better. And that goes back to the church trying to fast. If you're eating cookies and donuts and cake and you try to fast on Monday, that's penance because you can't get your fat source because your insulin's high and you feel miserable. So if people do low carb for a while or carnivore or something for 3 or 4 or 5 days, and then they try a fast, they go, "Oh, this is not bad. I'm not like dying," because you have withdrawal from sugar too, and that the habits and all those kind of things. But when you get into a state of ketosis, you feel calm. You feel like calm, but you also have energy too. So you might wake up an hour earlier than normal, things like that.
Right, and the biggest battle for me was the clock. You're used to eating at 4 p.m. every day, and your insulin and your all your hormones anticipate that, and then when it doesn't come, they're like, "Hey, what's up? Where's my food?" And then you just get busy and do something else, and next thing you know, it's 6 p.m. and there's no hunger there, and you're like, "Okay, I guess I wasn't really hungry. That was just it was all in my head."
Yeah, and I think there's so much to like what you're saying because I did OMAD for a year, right? 1 meal a day for a year, and I didn't lose a pound. Maybe I lost 2 pounds or something like that in a year. And they go, okay, your body gets used to what you're doing. So I think you're right. I think changing it up, like maybe have 2 meals one day, fast one day, do 3 meals one day, whatever it is, and just changing what you're doing. Michael Eads talked about that a while back and saying, okay, don't just be consistent because your body figures it out. It's like a dog. They know, like if you put on your running shoes, they know they're going for a run and they get excited. And our body, it's amazing just talking to people like Sean Baker and some of the long distance runners like Zach Bitter.
Mhm.
He says when he puts on his running shoes, because he runs so much, his sugars don't do anything on the continuous glucose monitor. But on the days he puts his sprint shoes on, his sugars go up before. And it's he tracks it and you look and you go, wow, that is crazy. Your body knows even though you're not doing anything yet. He's just putting his shoes on. And Rob Sivas showed that too, is that whenever he put on his running shoes, his sugars would go up beforehand. And the day before, it's normal. If he's just going to the office that morning, it stays low. And he's going to exercise, it goes up before he even exercises.
That's funny. Running shoes causes high blood sugar spikes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is because you're going to work out. Your body goes, okay, I'll free up some energy for you. And that's why sometimes carnivores may have a higher sugars than you would think. If they're not eating any sugar, how can their A1C be a little high? And it's because a lot of these guys are working out at a high level and the body goes, oh, you're not going to take in sugar. I know what you're doing. I'm just going to release a little extra for you.
Mhm.
Right. And so it's
Yeah.
kind of cool, like the physiology when you understand it, you go, wow, it's pretty amazing. Even type 1 diabetics, Dr. Kutnik is one of my favorite guys, super nice guy. And he says, look, if he's going to work out hard, like hit training, he has to shoot extra insulin before he goes. And the common practice is, oh, if you're a young college athlete and you're type 1, we have to shoot you. I mean, we have to give you a bunch of sugar before you work out so you don't get low sugars because the muscle is burning. But that's not what happens. They have no
Mhm.
insulin, can't shut off glucagon. So they get a huge high sugar. And then you put Gatorade on top of that, that's not good. Then they have to shoot a ton of insulin to bring it back down again, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. As you were talking about a year of OMAD, and I've always wondered about just doing OMAD for a while. So I've been experimenting for the past couple of weeks. I did OMAD for a day when I would just eat one reasonable meal a day, and I was able to drop a little over 5 pounds during a week. I was probably eating, you know, 1,500 calories a day, and I don't really count calories, so I just
Yeah, use
I,
it to satiety.
I just use that as a means of discussing the amount of food I was eating. And this past week, I've been eating OMAD and trying to intentionally eat more. And the more lever in this case is dairy, like more sour cream, more cheese, more butter. It's easy to add, 400 or 500 calories of those, um, and not get too stuffed. And I find that I can eat way more food now since I've become better at fasting. Anyway, the result of that is I've been able to maintain my weight all week on one meal a day by adding more dairy. So
Yeah, so those are interesting because sometimes if you're eating too little, your body goes into a stress mode and goes shut the metabolism down, and mental function can get worse, mood can get worse. So sometimes going up on the caloric intake, right, you feel better because your body's saying, "Hey, look, I need a certain amount of protein," and then. So what you're doing, I mean, you're kind of showing that even though you're eating more, your weight stays stable, and you go, okay, I can do this, and I'm happy with it. If you're at a good weight where you are now, and I've seen pictures of you working out, stuff. You're pretty ripped, man. You got some good muscle mass on you.
yeah, and interestingly, I've never been able to put on any muscle at all in my life, because I honestly didn't eat enough protein. And even when I was trying to work out, even when I was in my teens and 20s, I couldn't put on any muscle. And I started working out at age 52, and all of a sudden I can put on muscles. It's like, wow, this is a game changer. And
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah.
that's what gets me back in the gym. I look in the mirror, I'm like, who is that? That's me. Wow.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. And putting on muscle and getting that protein in a lot of people. And the biggest marker for longevity is muscle mass. The more muscle mass you have, the longer you live. Because the more muscle mass you have, the lower
Absolutely.
your insulin is going to be, the lower your visceral fat. They're inhibitory to each other. So the problem we get into as we get older, if we don't jump on that and start paying attention to it, and I still am struggling with that, is once you build up a lot of visceral fat, visceral fat inhibits muscle mass, and muscle mass inhibits visceral fat. So if you don't have a lot of muscle and you sit and drink soda and eat cookies every night, you build up visceral fat. Now it's hard to put muscle on. So a guy like you, and it could be that a lot of people with Asian and Indian descent, they just put visceral fat. They don't get fat on the outside. I don't know. When you gained weight, was it all in your belly, or did you get fat hips and butt and everything?
It was initially, I would say, the first 30, 40 pounds in my belly, and then it started hitting me in the face,
Oh yeah.
mostly from the waist up, face and belly mainly.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's pretty amazing. And that's how it is with having more visceral fat. So once you decrease that visceral fat, now you can put muscle mass on a lot easier. And that may be what you're doing, right? Because I was thinking about it, it was a struggle for me because I have a guy who I talk about him a lot because it really he changed my thinking because him and his wife came in, he was 320 pounds and she's like 158 pounds or something like that. In the first 6 weeks, I think she lost 38 pounds and he lost four. And he wasn't cheap, but took him off all of his diabetes meds, his blood pressure normal, everything got better. And like I'm like apologizing. I'm like, man, I can't believe you only lost 4 pounds. It's ridiculous. You should have lost because I told the wife on the first visit he's gonna lose like 58 pounds and you're gonna lose like 4 or 8 or something. And it was the opposite. I'm like, how can that be? And so I reached out to Sean O'Mara and he goes, hey Brian, remember that they did studies of CAT scans across the abdomen, and as you lose visceral fat, you put on muscle mass. So this guy, even though he only lost 4 pounds, he lost 8.5 inches off his waist in 6 weeks because he was losing visceral fat and putting on muscle mass without even working out hard. And you go, oh my goodness. So you just go, and I was thinking, why would that be? It doesn't make sense. Our body is trying to make us live. Why would there ever be an advantage to uh, inhibiting muscle mass ever? Well, if you're going to hibernate, if you're stressed and tense and worried and you think bad times are coming, your body says, let's raise cortisol and we'll break down muscle into sugar so you have an energy source, right? So it's amazing how these things work. And you go, okay, if I can decrease my visceral fat, a guy like you put on muscle mass. Now you have protection against putting on more visceral fat because you have muscle mass now. So it kind of tilts the scale in your benefit, even if your weight
Yeah,
doesn't change.
I get a lot of people actually ask me that. They'll say I'm losing inches on my waist, but the scale isn't moving at all. And I'm like, well, something good's happened. Just keep doing that. Eventually, the scale is going to catch up.
Yeah,
Um,
that's absolutely correct. And that's the thing is, if you're losing it, and there's what I tell patients, I see patients all the time, and like their pants are falling. This guy, his pants were falling off, his shirt was loose. He goes, "Look, this is the same shirt I met when I first saw you, and the buttons were pulled apart. Look at now, it's like it's falling off of me." with 4 pounds of weight loss. And it really, because that's why the scale can be a huge hurdle because if you're losing visceral fat and putting on muscle mass, you're metabolically healthier. This guy normalizes diabetes and came off all of his meds with 4 pounds of weight loss. So you can't say it's just the weight, it's where that weight is. If the weight's in muscle, who cares? If it's in fat, okay, that's going to be a problem. So yeah, it is really remarkable how the scales up, but in the same time, his insulin dropped from like way up high to totally normal, and that with 4 pounds of weight loss. So that's why these studies you see are really misleading because when they're talking about weight loss, well, one's if you're losing all muscle mass, is that a good way to lose weight? Of course. And this comes back to the Ozempics and the GLP-1 agonists is that if 40% of your weight loss is muscle mass, 40 to 60%, depending on the study, that is not a good trade-off for the long term.
Nope. Um, yeah, life is all about having strength. When you run out of strength, you die. And if you're giving up your muscles, it's putting you closer to death, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Absolutely true. And you say, okay, maintain your muscle mass. So when I have seniors, as a matter of fact, I have a new patient who just signed up with me. She's 85 years old. I'm like, my wife's like, why are you signing up with him? He goes, my doctor says I'm too old and there's no that like this is just your life and you're gonna have diabetes and meds. And she goes, I'm not playing that game. I read about Dr. Lentz because I want to come down. I'm like, this is awesome, man, because we could have fun. Like if she's invested, and when she's 89, she'll be healthier than she is in 85. Are you kidding me? That's awesome.
yeah, I just posted about this lady named Joan McDonald. She's on Instagram. She has 2 million followers.
Wow.
She was 5'3", 200 pounds at the age of 70 when she started working out, and now this lady has guns,
Oh,
and
I've
she,
seen her. I think she's the one I've seen. Yeah.
yeah, it's
I'll have to track
crazy.
her down.
But she says she has high blood pressure. She eats tons of fruit and a lot of high carb stuff. She doesn't. I don't think she understands about insulin and high blood sugars. But otherwise, this lady looks amazing for 78 years old. I hope I can look half as ripped at that age.
Yeah, it would be interesting if she got an A1C, a fasting insulin level, and see what they look like, and also a
Yeah,
uric acid
absolutely.
level too, and just see what
Hmm.
it looks like because fructose is the worst thing for uric acid. And it's the worst because if you're eating a lot of fruit, you're telling your body, fruit juice in particular, if you have a lot of fructose, put it that way, fructose causes uric acid to go up and it causes insulin to go up. So that's a double whammy against weight loss. And I think that's when I was gaining, before I did low carb and keto, I was doing juice fasting in the morning. I would just have a green drink, and you think, oh my gosh, if I had a CGM on, I would have totally destroyed because. You're not just going to eat kale and spinach. You're going to add in some grape juice or orange juice or something to make it taste good. You're not going to just drink kale and spinach, right?
Yeah,
And so I
right.
know I'm like I was teasing my wife and like, you were trying to kill me, weren't you, with that juice because it's pure fructose. You're pure, and that's like the worst thing for all physiology. And then a friend of mine told me about Robert Lustig, and my first exposure was that Sugar the Bitter Truth. That was after I heard about Jason Fung and started becoming friends with him, and he's explaining to me how it works. But it's amazing how these things happen. You go, oh, maybe that's not a good way to go because you think, and I was eating white rice instead of fried rice. I would eat, and you go, oh my gosh, because I thought rice was healthy. I was having sushi all the time, thinking, oh, that's how I'm going to lose weight, and I gained weight, and my sugars were, I was in the pre-diabetic range. You go, this isn't good. I got to change it up, and then you change it up, and everything, all your numbers start getting better.
Yep. That's sometimes you just gotta switch it up and do the opposite of what you've been told. And I mean, if nothing's working, what have you got to lose?
Yeah, and if you're suffering and you're miserable and your mood's messed up and your back hurts and your knees hurt, and you go, okay, I got to change something. It's not working. And like you said, taking all these ibuprofens all the time and just trying to function and being miserable, and you're not going to have patience with people when you're hurting. It's like annoying. And so tell me this. I see you're posting all this stuff, awesome recipes online. So you're working on a cookbook, I understand.
Hmm. It's a collection of everything that I just played with. I worked in the restaurant industry for almost 30 years, so I have a good idea of how to make a lot of things, and then just tweaking an ingredient here and there and trying to make it low carb and not full of a bunch of chemicals and processed junk wasn't too difficult. Just trying to make it so that it's easy for anybody to make. That was probably the most challenging aspect of it, and Um, I've got somebody working on it. I'm hoping by the time the first snowflake falls that it will be available to people.
Awesome, exciting. Yeah. So what are your favorite recipes in there? Or do you have any
Uh,
go-tos that you like that's your like you could just do that?
I really like this Salisbury steak recipe that I make. It's really a glorified burger and with a reduction gravy, with reduction gravy just being heavy cream and stock reduced, and it's really good. I'm always in the mood for that.
Awesome, man. I need a copy of that. I need a copy
Yep,
of that. And so,
absolutely.
yeah, we'll be excited when it comes out. And maybe we either have you back or we run this episode around that time because I think it would be so great for people. Because one of the biggest hurdles, for sure, no question about it, I'll tell you this with 100% certainty, is the more we eat out, the harder it is to maintain weight loss, for sure. Like when I'm traveling between Arizona and California, and some of my friends will go, "Let's go to dinner. You're in town." I was like, "Oh no," because even if you get a Cobb salad, you get what I mean. You're gonna have bad oils. You're gonna have bad, your sugars are gonna go up. Those kind of you can't control it. When you make it yourself, it's just that much easier. And hopefully, your recipes are where people like commoners like me can do it. And just say, it's not gonna take 6 hours to make a dinner, where it's something that you can just throw together and say, okay, I'm gonna make this for the week and prepare. Is that what you do now? Do you prepare for the week in advance, or you just go, I'm making this tonight when I get home?
Well, when I was eating 2 meals a day and having to work my work nights, work days back and forth, I would make enough food for um, an entire day or two. I would cook in the morning and package up a couple lunches, and then but I always find that a hot meal is best. It's just a lot more satisfying. As far as being on the road, I haven't been on the road too much since I've been carnivore keto. I'll just usually just fast if I can, or get some jerky or biltong. Biltong's great, pork rinds, things like that. But I've always told myself that I could always take my hot plate and a frying pan and fry steaks in the hotel and get all the guests wondering where's that smell coming from. You know,
Yeah, I mean
that's
that's
an option.
I mean, then you eat that and you're full all day. Like you don't have to eat 6 times a day. And so people, it's hard for them to understand. Like if your train's running on twigs and stuff, it's not going to run very far. But if it's running on coal, it's going to run a lot farther. So if we can train ourselves to run on fat, we do just can go that much, have energy, and you don't need to worry about those glycogen stores as well as much. And our body replenishes the glycogen super quickly, so it's not like we have to, eat carbs all day long. And the research is very clear that there's no uh, net minimum of carbs that you can eat. Right, zero carbs, you can survive just fine.
Right. I love that. Say I get home and it's late and I'm like I usually don't eat at 7 o'clock and well, I can just skip it. It's no big deal. I'll just eat tomorrow. And people are looking at me like, how do you do that? Aren't you starving? You can't go all day without eating. You have to eat something. You had a long day. I'm like, no, I don't. And I've got body fat. Body fat is always the backup plan. Body fat is the snack.
That's why we have it. That is
That's why
there
I
for that
do it.
rainy day when you don't have all this stuff. So yeah, it's amazing we can't. But if your insulin's too high, you can't get to your body fat. So you have all this energy you can't get to. It's like having a huge diesel truck of fuel and you're running on the little tank because that insulin is blocking you from getting to the big tank. But if you lower that insulin down, it allows that, allows you to have access to the big tank and you could run forever like Zach Bitter does when he's running 100 miles at a time and crazy stuff like that.
Right. I've ran a lot of half marathons on just totally body fat, so I know how that works. As long as I stay in an aerobic state and keep my heart rate under 140, I can run almost indefinitely, or for as long as my knees and joints decide to hold up without losing a ton of energy. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I would love. I mean, I don't know. I'm gonna reach out to Zach Bitter and see if he'll do it. But I would love to see labs free, like fasting labs before you run 100 miles, and then after you run 100 miles. I'll bet you his LDL cholesterol goes up dramatically when he's running like that, right? Because his body's kicking out fat to burn, and it's a stress on the body. So it'd be really kind of cool for these long distance runners to see what their blood work looks like. Because if you saw them after the race, you probably want to put them in the hospital and give an IV of statin drugs and all this kind of stuff. But it's really the physiology of what's happening.
It definitely would be interesting. And like I know if I run up a lot of hills and stuff like that. I'm just completely trashed after a while. I can't do that forever because we only have so much um, glycogen that we can
Yeah.
store, and
Yeah, and that
it's
depletes the glycogen, and that's kind of the thing. Now you have a place to put the glycogen when you do have some carbs, right? So it just stores back there
right.
again. Okay, big deal. Yeah. What's your training like, by the way, now, Carrie? I mean, do you mostly are doing weights, or are you doing hit training, or what kind of stuff do you do to
Well,
maintain?
I had a hand injury and I wasn't able to get in the gym like I wanted, and then my gym got bought by another company, and they had to remodel for a month. So I've finally been able to get back into the gym. When things settle down, I hope to get into the gym 3 days a week for 20 to 30-minute sessions, um, and run twice a week, a mile each day, and that's a lot less running than I used to, but I feel like I can get a lot of aerobic benefit, and it fits my schedule right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. Just moving, whatever you do, if you something you enjoy, right? Just if you like dancing, dance. If you like running, run. But ride your bike, swim, do whatever you enjoy. Because if it's torture, you're not going to do it, and you're going to find every excuse. But if you go, hey, I really enjoy this, or let me see if I can beat my last time, or whatever it is, it just keeps you motivated.
Right. It's something that Chris O'Connell said that really resonated with me on one of your recent podcasts. He said when he slowed things down, he was able to enjoy it more. And that's how I was with running. I'm always out there trying to run a personal best, time, and I would just be destroyed at the end of it, because I just pushed myself to the
Yeah.
limit. And once I slowed down, it wasn't that bad. I felt really good. I got all the benefit, and I didn't feel destroyed. And I've been trying to focus more on that lately.
Yeah, awesome, man. It sounds like I love that you're self-experimenting. Let's try this. Let's pull this lever. Let's change this up a little bit. And you're doing different things to see what works best. And I think ultimately that's what we're called to do. The people who have the most success are able to say, okay, this isn't doing great for me. Let me try something different. Let me add this in or take this away or add in exercise or sleep more or watch my alcohol intake or watch the stress intake. All these things play a factor in metabolic health. And I'm so happy it's coming to the forefront. I mean that conference yesterday kind of blew me away. I was like, what's the odds of the government ever caring about this stuff? Ever. No one talked about this during the lockdowns to say, hey, the metabolically sick are the ones dying. That was the fact. And so you go, oh, how do I avoid the next pandemic? Okay, let me make myself as metabolically healthy as possible so I can get through this thing or give myself the best chance of getting it through it. Put it that
Right.
way.
Well, it's not necessarily government that is the problem. It's the people that are running the offices. I mean, when you have all these um, corporate people running these organizations, nothing's ever going to change because that doesn't make money. Uh,
Yeah, yeah. The conflict of interest in medicine is stunning. I never with the stuff I'm reading now, I'm like, I never would have believed it. I never would have believed how the ADA is funded. How's the American Heart Association funded? How's the FDA funded? And you realize the people we're regulating are the ones paying my paycheck. It's insane.
yeah, like I used to think of North Korea and communist countries as being the pinnacle of corruption, but look what's going on in our own country. We can't point the finger at those countries anymore when we're living in a glass house over here.
Yeah, I think it's human nature. I think it's the people will take advantage. If I can make extra money, then I'll do that, right? If I have to sell my soul a little bit, and that's the problem that when people live by integrity, they go, "I'm just not doing it." And at some point, when you have people with of a good enough integrity who we trust, I mean, there's certain people that I would trust my life with in medicine. There aren't very many now. There's a lot I've lost my trust in for sure, and I get it. If you're a standard doc, I'm like, I'm staying away from you. But if someone understands physiology and they understand how the body works, then you go, okay, that's the doctor I want who understands. Okay, if your LDL is a little high, what does it mean? What are your triglycerides? And when they see the big picture of how's your lifestyle, what are you doing with your life? And a guy like you who turns your life around, you're helping other people, you're reaching out there, and that's healthy in itself because it releases oxytocin, feel good chemical when you're helping other people and you go, gosh, maybe this will help someone else. I'm going to share this other person's story and uplift people rather than attacking people, and it just makes your life that much better.
And that just sets like a chain of dominoes in effect. Like the guy who helped me, he felt great, and he reached out and told me, and then I reach out and tell somebody else, and so
Yeah.
forth and
Yeah,
so
it's
forth.
amazing, man. And that's why it's such a great community because everyone wants to help each other. If you don't want to listen, go somewhere else and do your thing. But if you want to listen, we'll help you, and so many people along the way, Jason Fung being one. I reached out to him was a nobody, standard practice for 16 years of that time. And guess what? He goes, "Hey, Brian, here's how it works." And he explained it all to me. He took the time and even called me. I'm like, I call my brother, I can believe it. Jason Fung called me today, and he's helping me. He's teaching me this stuff. I'm like, this is cool. Like he wants to help people. And I've seen his character and integrity and all those things. But the thing I love about him, we just talked yesterday, as a matter of fact, and he goes, I'm looking at different studies. Maybe I'm off on some of the fasting stuff. Maybe I need to adjust what I'm doing and my messaging a little bit. I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. Like because if you say something else works, he goes, maybe you can add in some meat and on these fasting days or add in this and the outcomes are the same. Like, okay, why torture yourself if you don't have to? And so it's amazing if you're looking for insulin sensitivity is just to have someone like that who's going to be open minded enough to say, well, maybe I have it a little bit wrong. Maybe I need to change it a little bit. It's kind of cool.
It's very cool. I love that there are people like Jason Fung and Tim Noakes and you out there who are putting all this information out there, and you're doing it for free. You're not asking a dime for people that pop onto your videos on YouTube or listen to your podcasts. You guys are just doing this stuff for free, and
Yeah,
that
low carb MD. And then this podcast is sponsored by Health Code and Keto Mojo. They paid the production cost, so I don't have to take it out of pocket. But at first, I was paying for everything out of pocket because I wanted to get the message. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm struggling. I just left my practice. I'm everything at once. I'm like, I don't have that much resources to be funding paying the guy to edit the podcast and get him out there and stuff. So those guys have been extremely helpful. I mean, they helped me get off the ground. And if there's ever extra money at the end of the year, we donate it to charity or my medical trips that I do or things like that. So
that's
it's
great.
not. It's just getting the like guys like you getting your story out there and being able to provide a platform is why we did it and give people hope. I started this during COVID because I'm like, no one has hope. Everyone's like giving up. They're not exercising. They're gaining weight. They're miserable. They're drinking. They're eating frosted flakes every morning because they're stressed. And so I'm like, let's give some hope at least in this lockdown when we couldn't even go outside for a while there. So it was kind of cool to be able to do that. And it helped me mentally get through it too, because I know I'm reaching people still. They could be stuck in their house, but hear the podcast and say, there's still a sun outside. There's still birds chirping, no matter how much we're stressing right now. So I think it did help some people get through, and it's it's well worth the investment for sure. Because we could reach a lot more people. A lot more people are going to hear this than what I can reach in my exam room in my office.
Right. I love podcasts like yours, and I listen to Dr. Baker and Philip Avadia
Yeah.
and a few others. And this is how I find my people. I'm pretty much alone in the real world because most people don't think like me. They don't eat like me. They don't see the world like me. But I can always come to places like this and feel at home, and
Yeah. Yeah,
hopefully
you
reach
find your
reach the
tribe,
people.
you find your community, and that's a huge thing because so many people are isolated. And the worst thing is things like I'm giving up cookies and donuts. I'm sitting here by myself. But when people come to the low carb conferences that we do, it's amazing to hear the stories. You go, holy cow. And they're happy because everyone's eating the same thing. Oh, there's heavy whipping cream for my coffee if I want it. They don't have to be weird and say, I don't want bread. They're like, oh yeah, no one's eating bread now. Okay, cool.
Right.
And so it's not that you're the freak every time you go out to dinner, and so but I think what's going to happen is a lot more people are. I mean, almost anywhere you go in the world now, they'll go, "Oh, you want a keto?" Like I was talking to a lady, and it's funny. There's this little coffee shop we went to, and I asked the lady, "Go, hey, what do you cook your stuff in? Like your beans? Like it's a Mexican coffee shop, and they have Mexican food at night. Like, what do you cook your beans? Oh, vegetable oil only." I was like, "Oh, would you ever consider using lard or something different in your beans?" Because and we had a great conversation and talked to him. She was like, "Lard? Are you kidding me? That's what we used to use." I said, "Were you diabetic and overweight back then?" She said, "No." I'm like, okay, maybe there's something to it. I'm telling you, look at the data and I'll be glad to come talk to you. But sometimes it's just education. So I have, some Mexican restaurants. I'll just tell people, hey, if you could just use a different oil, use, olive oil or avocado oil when you're frying things and things like that. And most people are receptive, especially small. Like you're not going to go to a chain and say that, but some of the small restaurants, because I go, look, reality is I could send my patients to you and help your business, but you're going to have to change a little bit what you're doing to make it healthy for my patients, right?
Right. I was a kitchen manager in a restaurant back in the late 90s. And I remember the day when I saw canola oil pop up on my order guide, and we were using tallow at the time to fry everything.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, this stuff, look how cheap it is. Let me try it. Well, they never stopped using canola oil, and I kind of feel guilty about that.
Yeah, but everyone at the time thought that was a healthier way to go. I remember when they took all the coconut oil out of the popcorn at the movies and they go, "Oh my gosh, it's killing people." And then they put in trans fat and killed everyone with that. So it's sometimes they do these broad spectrum changes that aren't beneficial for people,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Well,
So
at the time, it was about money. It was, about taking the cheapest ingredient and trying to
totally,
get
it
the
still
most out
is.
of it.
It still is. If you go to a restaurant and you order olive oil, half the time it's 60% canola or safflower oil and 40%
Right.
olive oil. They if you ask them, they go, yeah, we kind of it's cheaper. They can't afford to get pure olive. Even my friends who own Italian restaurants, high-end Italian restaurants, they go, oh, we can't use pure olive oil because that's super expensive. We'll go out of business. So you're kind of stuck. So if you make it at home, you could get the best olive oil possible and enjoy that and have health benefits. So it's hard. Eating out is a hard thing. It really is because you don't want to be for me, I go, okay, I only eat out once every 2 or 3 weeks. So if there's some oil that's bad in my salad, what are you going to do? It's kind of, or you could bring your own olive oil with you. So there's things you can do. It's just more challenging when you're eating. But a guy like you who's making food at home, that's the best way you can do it because you know exactly what's in your food.
Another thing to be wary of when you're eating out is almost always whipped butter isn't
Yeah.
just butter. It's going to have some margarine in it. Every place I've
Yeah,
ever worked at.
totally. Yeah, I learned that not too long ago. And you go, oh my gosh, that's ridiculous. Yeah, all that kind of stuff. There's all these tricks that they do to save money, and you realize, oh, that whipped butter. You're better up to eating the tabs, even though it's not as cool, right? And it's
Right.
harder to spread and all that stuff. But that's the way to go for sure. So, Carrie, how do people track you down if they want to learn more about what you're doing or get your recipes and all that kind of stuff?
Well, I'm mainly on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. Cary Kelly 11. Uh, at Cary Kelly 11, CARYKELLY 11. I have my links on that page uh, to a YouTube website where I do a little cooking. I'm not as active as I am on Twitter though.
Awesome, yeah. And so people can track you down. Hopefully, when your book comes out, you'll have a link on Twitter that we could all go find you.
Absolutely, I'll pin it.
All right, and then we'll do it. I have a newsletter I send out to listeners of the podcast, and we can definitely put a link to the book when it comes out. We'll have it on there, and so people can find it. And because I know your recipes I've seen some of the stuff you did. I know it takes a lot of work because you trial and error and figure out what works and what doesn't work. And so
Right.
it's pretty cool. You put in all the effort, and we can kind of get the benefit of that.
Thanks. I would appreciate that, Brian.
Yeah, for sure. And also, I got to ask you, since it's life's best medicine, what's life's best medicine for you? Like, where do you go when things are really hard? Where do what gives you your motivation? What do you draw from to do what you're doing?
Uh, well, surround yourself with real people. Eat real food. Get the fake out of your life. Be passionate about what you're doing. Be passionate about things worth doing. And at the end of the day, you should be able to say that I should be able to say that I made the world a little bit better instead of a little bit worse. If you can't surround yourself with good people, try and make the people around you better.
Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. Everyone, this is great advice from Carrie here. He's really turned his life around, got better, and this is leave the world a little bit better, right? Hopefully, this podcast is doing that for you and your family, and little things you hear and go, oh, maybe I'll change this little thing. You don't have to be dramatic and drastic. Just make little changes. If you're drinking soda every day, get rid of that. Clearly, it's one of the worst things. Or orange juice every day. Make those little changes and see how you feel and do what Carrie did. Kind of just say, hey, look, I got to make some changes and do it. And then give it some time. Be patient with the process and be kind to yourself, be kind to other people, make the world a better place. All those things are good for you. It helps your oxytocin level, which is the feel good chemical, lower down the stress and cortisol. So reach out, help other people. Don't be a pain and force on other people. Go here's my recipe. You can take it or leave it, right? Like what Carrie's doing. And this is great information. And Carrie, I'm so glad we finally got to connect. It's been a long time coming, and thanks for your flexibility. I had to change the schedule on you at the last minute.
My
And
pleasure.
just thanks for all you're doing and the impact you're having on the community and being a positive force.
Likewise. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode. We greatly appreciate your support. We would greatly appreciate a positive thumbs up on all of the platforms like iTunes and Spotify or wherever you're listening. And we just thank you for our Patreon supporters. We greatly appreciate your help in getting this message out. We think there's a lot of important information, and hopefully this helps you. Have a great day, and thank you for listening, and thank you for your support.